Hi, I'm Eric. Welcome back to the Infer Product Update Show, episode 2.
The Product Update Show, the Product Update.
So in the last episode, I showed you the Mixpanel integration in Infer, and I was meant to then continue from there on into speaking about the activity schema support we have and how you can use that to model event data. However, I kept talking. The video got really long, so I had to split into 2 parts. So what you're about to see is the continuation of that demo or that video where I show off the native support in Infer for the activity schema as a way of modeling event data, but I also talk a little bit about how the activity schema can be used to model event data more broadly, more generally. Enjoy!
Activity schema and event.
Right, so now let me show you our native supports for the activity schema as a way of modeling event data within Infer. The activity schema is essentially an approach to modeling event data that makes it easier to do the typical type of analysis you might do, like understanding user flows and customer journeys, etc. There are 2 parts to the activity schema. One is the data representation, and the other one is the type of analysis you can do with that data representation. The data representation itself is about representing all event data as a single table. That's the premise, where each row is an event. It has a user ID or session ID and has a timestamp, and then it has all the other data you might capture about each event. That enables you then to create user flows by joining that table to itself over and over again, right? So you can group by a particular user ID and then, sort by the timestamp and then join that with events, etc., etc. That's the first part, data representation. The second part is a set of commands that then enable you to work on that table quite easily and understand things like which events comes before a particular event, which what events happen between these 2 events, etc., etc. So these are just making it easier to do this type of analysis, right? So the first part, the data representation, is natively supported in Infer from how we pull data in from event platforms like Mixpanel, always comes in that format. And now I'll show off the second part, which is a set of native commands in Infer that enables you to do analysis on that event data super easily without having to write complicated SQL. Right, so to illustrate how easy it is to work with event data using the activity schema in Infer, let me show you a couple of commands that are natively supported, a couple of activity schema commands that are natively supported in Infer. So this one is the first one of the activity schema commands, first after. What it does is given a event table, given an activity in that table, I'm going to use auto submitted. I know that's one of the activities in my Mixpanel data set here. It is going to look up for every row, for every event in your data set, the first time that the activity that you're passing in, i.e. auto submitted in this case, happened in that session for that user after that activity or that event in that row happened, right? So imagine you have a row where the event is captured, that row is session started or product clicked or something like that. Now it's going to append to that a column with the time that the order submitted first happened after that event for that user session, right? I'll show you what that looks like quickly. It's going to spin up. Here we go. So in this case, the top event is session started. The next one is list viewed, right? It's the same user. They started a session and they did a search in the e-commerce platform. Now you get 2 new columns here, one called event secondary and event and time secondary. These are all null if the event, i.e. order submitted, never happened in that session. If the order submitted happened in this session, these will be filled out. Let me quickly show you what that looks like. They're filled out. Where time secondary is not null. Let's run that one. And here we go. So now you can see all of these, there's 1700 events. They're only where the actual column at the end is filled out. So here we have a session started. This user started a session, viewed a product clicked the details, shared it, added to cart, etc. Same user. And at some point they ended up buying it, so they order submitted it. And here you can see that was the first time in this session that the order submitted event was triggered after the session started. Was it this time? So there you go. That's basically it. So this enables you to build up flows, right? Let me show you one quick command as well. There's many more. I'll show you, for example, a count, right? So this gives you the first after. We also have last after, before. So you can say first before. So if I want to understand what was the first, what was the last order submitted that happened just before my event, etc. We can also do this one, count after. So it's going to count not how many times order submitted happened in that for that user. Right, so you might be looking at how many times did they click a product or something like that. So now we're going to get a column appended. That's going to give you, in this case, the order submitted didn't happen, but basically going to count how many times that event happened in that session after this particular event, right? And that's it. Lots more commands, and you can look them all up. And I'm going to show you a few more in a more complex example now. But that's it. Very simple to work with. Right, so here's my more complex example. Lots going on here, so let me talk you through it a bit in detail. All of these are different CTEs that I'm creating, so I'm creating different subqueries all nested within each other, building up a bigger and bigger table where each column represents a new feature that I built via the activity schema commands. And then finally at the end, I'm going to shrink that set down to only the rows where the event is session started. So I'm only going to look at sessions starting, or I'm only going to look at rows which are session started, so the beginning of a session, and I'm going to build up features after that with different things that happen in that session, and that I'm then going to analyze in my analysis query down here. But let me just explain to you quickly what happens in each one of these steps. The first step here is me extracting a few features from my mixed panel data set that I care about. I'm looking at the last 180 days, the last 6 months. I'm going to extract the time, the event itself, name, the time of the event, that is the use ID of the event. I'm going to extract using another Infer command here, JSON extract save, which is a nice way of extracting from a JSON column, from a text column that have JSON, a particular field. So I'm going to extract the UTM command. Campaigns, that's the name of the campaign that brought people into the website, the medium and the source. So that's my my shrunk down event set that I look at. Now, based on that, I'm then going to start building filters. The first one here, orders, is going to append the same way I described before. I'm doing an is after, so it's going to append a Boolean column to my data set, which is true if the order submitted happened in after that particular event in that row. Hope that makes sense. The next one is a count. So the next one's going to count for every row. So for every event in my data set, it's going to count how many times the event account created happened after that event in that same user session. And then I'm going to do the same thing, the count over and over again with different events. I'm going to count how many times the product shared happened in that after that particular event. How many times did checkout promo code added? How many times did product details viewed, product clicked, list viewed, that's a search, list searched, happened. All of these, how many times did it happen in each of the, after each of the events in my event table. And then finally, I'm going to shrink down my event table to only look, as I mentioned before, only look at session started. So what it's going to do, I'll show you what that means. It's going to build up rows where each row represents the event session started, and it's going to have columns that says whether or not an order was submitted in the same session after that session started event, if the account was created, product share, etc. So I'm building up a lot of features in a very easy way. Look, imagine how difficult this would be with normal SQL, right? Here I'm just saying count after. So count how many times the event account created happened after my session started. Count how many times product shared happened after my session started, etc., etc., etc. So I'll spin here for a little bit. It takes a few seconds. Right, so here we go. So that's the preview of this SQL I just wrote, and here we can see that we have 14,100 rows. Each row is a session started event. So each one represents a session basically from the beginning. Here are the columns that I pulled out: time, distinct, ID, UTM, campaign, medium, and source. And over here we then have all the columns we built using our activity schema commands. So there's a boolean here. Order submitted is true, so that is whether or not there's an order in this session or not, so whether or not someone actually made a purchase. And then then we have a number of counts. So account created count, product shared, checkout promo. So there's a lot of different events here, counters here. We can see like list search count, list viewed count, etc. And we're going to use these to analyze what drives an order submitted. So that's it. That's what we basically easily created this table, right? Where we get counts for every event that happened in that session. That's really nice, really neat. Something that usually takes you quite a lot of work to do in SQL. This is all in SQL underneath the hood, but it's just very, very easy to do with the activity schema commands. So that's great. The table looks good. Now I'm going to do some analysis on it. So now I have it all set up that I can just easily do a piece of analysis on this. I can basically use one of our templates here. I can say, okay, I'm going to predict order submitted is true. That's it. And I can run it. Voila. And now we're basically going to build a predictive model to predict whether or not a session, from all these features, whether or not a session leads to a purchase or not. And then we can use that to dig in and understand what are the main drivers of purchase in here. So here we come back. You know, it's only about 14,000 rows, so it doesn't take very long for the model to be created, trained, and analyzed. Results are coming back now. And here we go. Here are the results. So what we have now is a pretty high accuracy model, 97%. So it's a really high, really good predictor of whether or not a session leads to purchase or not. And we can see what are some of the main drivers from the features we created that leads to purchase. It turns out that adding a promo code at checkout is a very high indicator. That's not really surprising. The second biggest one is number of times the product is viewed. Then whether an account was created in that session, that's kind of interesting. So it's basically whether or not the account was created. So your first-time buyer, that's a big driver of purchase. So the first session where you create an account is more likely to lead to a purchase than the second time you come back or the third time you come back. Product click count is also a big driver. So all of these now we can just scroll down. We can see, we can dig in. We can get some more features created. Off this, we could also create a predictive pipeline if we want to run a schedule. All these nice things that you get with the Infer platform, but all done on mixed panel data. All done by easily modeling the event sequences into feature tables that you can then run predictors on and do analysis on. And that's the power of the activity schema. It turns what is usually quite complicated, i.e. modeling and analysis of event data, into really simple terms, like you can do with these simple commands. We just saw is after and count after. You can have in between, so you can say you can give two activities and say I want to count the number of times this activity happens between these other two events. You can have before, so like how many times did product viewed happen before a particular event instead of after, and so on, so on. Lots more of them. I'm including some links along the way here where you can see all the other relational joins that you can do in the activity schema, or supported by the Infer platform. Yeah, so to conclude, this was a really small example. Actually, I just did a little bit complicated SQL that came out perhaps, but a small example of analysis, but showed you how easy it is to work with mixed panel and the activity schema in the Infer platform. I hopefully gave you some of us understanding more generally about what the activity schema can do when it comes to event modeling and how powerful it is. If you found it interesting, my little walkthrough, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, or give us a ping. I'd love to discuss more how you can model event data in general with the activity schema, and in particular how you can do it with Infer. Until next time, ciao.
That is it for the show. That is it for the show. That is it for the show. That is